on the H-2A issues. I think that it's a struggle every year with just the execution of that program. And I am a bit concerned, I'm not going to ask you to respond, a bit concerned with casting the users of the H-2A program as, I don't think you meant it, but I could have inferred that they're all bad actors. Speaking for North Carolina, I think housing, workplace safety, compensation is competitive and done appropriately. So I hope as you go about any kind of changes there, we don't paint all of the players in agriculture with the same broad brush.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
I think it's
Senator.
critically important because we could have some unintended consequences that are hurting
in the budget, but we've also sought an appropriation for a $4.7 billion Southern Border Contingency Fund because of the dynamism of the border and the situation there.
to surge it.
And so, yes, so we would seek
on the
the
basic
additional
question,
funds.
because I don't want to have clarification for Senator Lee's time cut into mine too much. But just for the basis of clarification, I'd like to know, based on the budget, what ICE's position is now with what I think is roughly 36,000. Do you expect to see that go down based on the administration's priorities? Now I want to get to sanctuary cities and a few other things. 4.9 million encounters with illegal immigrants. We know that some of those are double counted because there are multiple crossings. 1.2 million gotaways. These are folks who came here, did not present themselves, did not want to be processed, many of them. They wanted to get into this country and escape apprehension. I've been to the border several times. Most of the people come across the border, they follow the arrow from the Rio Grande River, they go to a processing facility, they go through a process that's overwhelmed. But 1.2 million gotaways, based on my numbers, if they're different, you could submit it for a question for the record, over the past couple of years. 600,000 illegal immigrants released into the country without monitoring. Again, we won't debate back and forth. I'd just like to say if that's roughly the number that you all are working with. 285,000 released into the country with some sort of electronic monitoring, about 27,000 in detention, and 890 deaths in 2022 of people trying to cross the border. I saw one of them being taken out of the Rio Grande River in one of my last visits over the past year and a half. Mr. Chair, I'd like to submit for the record an article that was published in the Wall Street Journal. It's titled, "It's Like a Graveyard. Record numbers of migrants are dying at the U.S. border."
Without objection.
We have a problem at the border, and I think you may acknowledge some of that, but you fall short of calling it a crisis. These numbers look to me like a crisis without any viable strategy moving forward. I believe that the cartels, it's been reported that the cartels are making as much as $800 million a year in their human trafficking operation with the tolls that they charge people. Some are paid before they cross the Rio Grande River. Others are paid once they get here and they enter into modern-day indentured servitude, paying back the cartels for the toll over here. And we're seeing estimates ranging anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000, depending upon your country of origin. If I have time, I'll get back to that. Sanctuary cities. ICE, do you consider ICE a law enforcement agency?
Yes, I do.
Do you consider a lack of cooperation among law enforcement agencies as being a potentially hazardous step to take?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe that sanctuary cities is a case example of where local law enforcement refuses to cooperate with ICE?
Senator, the term sanctuary city means different things in different places.
I'm just referring to legislation and policies that were passed in my state where they used it. But
I do not agree when a
net it out. It's like I think a week or so ago where we had 3 illegal immigrants from Romania. They were arrested and charged with obtaining property under false premises, and one was charged with sexual battery of a minor. Thankfully, in this jurisdiction, they did detain them. ICE was allowed to do their job. I've got over 3 million people. State of 10 million. 3 million people living in sanctuary jurisdictions, which is why I proposed, and will propose again, a violence for victims of sanctuary cities. And it's fairly simple. It says that if a local government entity has a sanctuary policy, call it whatever you want to, refusing to cooperate with ICE policy. We'll call it that because that's fundamentally what they're doing. I feel like they should be held accountable if their actions produce harm. If someone gets murdered, like somebody did in the Charlotte area with somebody who was could have been transferred to ICE, or countless examples across the country. I simply want a private right of action for the aggrieved party or their survivors in the event of death to be able to sue that governmental entity. Now, it's fairly straightforward to me. If the policies are fair, if they're safe, then they've got nothing to worry about. And then if they declare immunity, then they'll be denied federal funds for law enforcement. So make a decision, but don't have the risk of safety. And this is not your problem. I'm saying this to the people in North Carolina and across the country that are implementing these policies. You are destroying good order and discipline among various levels of law enforcement. They are, you are not. They're destroying it, and I think that their actions have to have some legal recourse. Now, have there been any communications with, to what extent have you or people up in the organization communicated to these jurisdictions that a blanket sanctuary city policy is not helpful to Homeland Security?
Senator, this is something that I've spoken with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and CBP extensively. I do not agree.
How many ICE detainers have been issued since January?
I'd have to take a look at that.
2021.
I'd have to take a look at that, Senator.
Did I get that for the record? The number of ICE detainers?
Yes.
And what I'm particularly interested in is granularity. The number of ICE detainers, the basis for the detainer request, and the disposition of that request by local entities. Can I get a commitment to get that information?
Yes, Senator. And I want you to know that I share your concern when a local jurisdiction has an individual or has information that would benefit the public safety of the community and does not share that information with Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Yeah, and we should be clear that I'm not talking about somebody who got into a fender bender. I'm talking about people that may be in there for sexual assault. We know they're in there for that, for trafficking or any number of other violent or potentially violent crimes. So I need that information because I want to put pressure on local governments in the state of North Carolina saying, if you want to do this, I want you to be held accountable. And to be held accountable, we need to pass the Justice for Victims of Sanctuary Cities Act. Now I want to talk about the transnational criminal organization. I didn't know this till today. I looked it up. Did you know that Jalisco, the cartel, translates into stoned? Literally, it's a informal adjective. So that translates into the new stone generation. One of the two cartels that cover the breadth of the northern border. They're making $800 million a year. I've seen their agents across the Rio Grande when I'm there at midnight, 1 o'clock, saying, we're coming. We are aiding and abetting one of the most profitable lines of business these thieves and these murderers have going. We have a crisis at the border. And like Senator Welch, I'm not someone who's just saying secure the border. I'm also saying someone please fix the broken asylum system and the immigration system, even touching on what Senator Ossoff has discussed. But until we have consensus that we have a crisis, we have to work on a bipartisan basis. For those who say secure the border, not willing to talk about immigration, they're going to allow another 6 to 10 million people come in before we fix it over the next 5 or 8 years. For those who say we don't have an immigration problem, there's just too many facts to argue against it. So, Mr. Mayorkas, if I could especially get the information that I want on the ICE detainers, and then we're going to continue to work on the crisis at the border and hopefully make some progress. It's unsafe for the American people. It is causing the deaths of untold numbers of people making the dangerous journey, and I could go a long way, and I won't because I've already got the gavel tap, on asylum reform. And I believe if we want to look at asylum reform differently, we need to look at our treaty obligations, and we need to see it needs to go further upstream than just what we do. And when I see fact patterns where people are moving through 2 or 3 or 4 nations that they could apply for asylum in before they get to the United States, that looks a lot to me like an exploitation of our asylum policy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Tillis, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. You've given us